All right. So, welcome to another edition of This Time Around. I'm Debbie Hazelton, and oh gosh, on the YouTube channel as well. And I have a very special guest, a dear friend. Just amazing how we became friends. And I don't even know what year that was. Quite a while ago, though. I was living in Orlando at the time, and you were there quite a bit. And
2006, maybe.
no, I came to live there in '07.
Oh, that
So
must have been
it might have been
07.
9 or 10
Yeah.
when this happened. I'm gonna guess 9 or 10. So Dr. Tom Hudson, and doctor in many ways you are, and I know officially a radiologist, right? But
Yes.
I think you're a doctor in a bigger way of helping people to heal in a larger way than the medical, but that's more for for what we'll talk about here. To talk about probably many things, but your book, this is your second book,
This is
or
my
is it
second book.
your
Yes.
second book, and it is called
It's called Something Deeper.
oh, Something Deeper. So I read about half of it last night. It is absolutely beautiful. I know that it comes from the depths of you, bringing out places that you weren't really used to bringing out publicly. Is that right?
Yes, that's true. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm used to it in small groups,
In small groups.
um,
Yeah.
but not so much publicly.
Let's go back a little bit before we dive even more into this one. Tell people about your first book and some of that journey.
My first book was, I guess it's about 10 or maybe 12 years old now. It was called Journey to Hope. And it's not about breast cancer. It's what I do is I'm a radiologist, but my subspecialty is breast imaging. So I deal with breast cancer diagnosis. And most women who go through that process of being evaluated to see if they have breast cancer, most of them actually don't have breast cancer. It's usually an odd little finding we need to check out or whatever. And I realized that even as the medical system, we would tell people they're at high risk by these different models that we do, but we never told them what they could do about it. And even women who were diagnosed, because where I practiced, I would give everybody results. In other words, they do their mammogram. I would come in and tell them, and they always had, whatever the results were, and they always had questions. And for the smaller percentage of women that actually did have breast cancer that were going to enter the system for treatment, their questions were always, not always, I say, but always in a non-medical way. There were always questions I couldn't answer, which was, well, what's causing this? Is there anything I can do about it?
What do you mean you couldn't answer?
In terms of there were no answers. There are answers in the medical system for when you have breast cancer and treatment and all of that. But in terms of what causes it and is there anything you can do about it, right, as a regular person? Can you decrease your risk? There at the time, there were very few answers about that. There wasn't much put out about that. And they would
So
always ask
it
me, what can I do? I know my doctor will take care of all the stuff, right? The chemo or whatever was needed, the surgery, but what can I do?
Mhm.
And that's what I'm talking now, 20, 25 years ago. There's 10 years or so before the book, because that's what started me on the journey was, well, just because they're not teaching us this stuff in school doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So I started doing my own research on it, and found out that yes, there is actually a lot you can do. That holistic lifestyle and diet and decreasing stress, all those kinds of things will actually decrease your risk of breast cancer. So that's what the book was about, to sort of tell people in everyday language what they could do to sort of empower them, because the medical system in terms of breast cancer diagnosis generally doesn't empower women. It just says, well, come and get your mammogram. We'll let you know if you have cancer or not, and we'll see you next year. Right? It doesn't tell you anything about a healthy lifestyle.
These women were women that were there getting a regular or routine mammogram, and you were one of the ones seeing the images. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I would see the images and then give them the results.
And what you inevitably began to be able to recommend in your book, and or even if you did any with unofficially talking to some of these women, or maybe talking to them, but certainly nothing that was prescribed, but it's nothing that would hurt people. It's just, kind of good, sound information, kind of advice at, like you said, holistic living.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it was not medical advice.
No.
It's sort of outside the medical system, but it was all of that started my whole journey into more of a holistic mindset, when you realize that there's very much outside the medical system that you can do to decrease your risk. For instance, I'll just give you one little snippet is women who exercise I think 3 to 4 hours a week cut their risk of breast cancer in half.
It's amazing.
50%. And the exercise was walking.
Oh.
This was the study. So and different dietary changes, low fat diet, I mean, a whole foods diet, that kind of thing. So it's not medical advice in the conventional medical perspective. So I was free to give it, and it wasn't advice that they were generally going to get as they went through the system anyway.
Sure.
So that's what led me on to, honestly, a whole search through the whole holistic world, when I realized, well, wait a minute, there's all this information out there, and my conventional system that I was trained in is not telling us this.
No.
Right.
No,
this wasn't available.
Business.
Well, yeah. I learned a lot about that as time went by.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know how many medical people know that you have this kind of other side or interest. Have you had flack from the profession?
No, I sort of expected it, honestly, that I would get some, but mostly they're just so busy. They're not paying attention to me. I'm a radiologist, and they sort of have their own thing going on. And I like I said, I was very, especially in the first book, I was very careful to tiptoe, in terminology and stuff, because part of it was not just to women, because honestly, the society in general, they know these things more than their doctors.
Mm-hmm.
So part of it was also to doctors, as in, hey, if you take a look, there might be more to what we were taught, so I wanted to tread very carefully. Yeah, maybe just sort of plant a few seeds of that they might question, instead of being in anybody's face about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
And also the deeper, I guess this is what gets into my second book, is that this is all deeper than it seems, on the surface. I mean, all surface maladies, human maladies, diseases, et cetera, have a deeper origin.
Yeah.
And it gets very mysterious, but it's not, just because it's mysterious doesn't mean it's not real.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people who like forgiveness, compassion, I mean, the things that sound, I don't know, almost cliche or church-like, are anything but.
Yeah,
because they're sort of they're really our deepest healing tools.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when people deal with some of those deeper issues and deal with some of their old wounds and heal from that, then there isn't any medical issue that isn't improved.
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes goes away.
Sure.
So I guess that's the gamut of sort of what I do with people besides just reading the mammograms.
So talk to us about this book. It's a beautiful title, and there are many beautiful ways that you have shared in there.
This is the book I've always wanted to write. Actually, it's not medical. It's called 31. The subtitle is 31 Spiritual Poems to Help You Navigate Life. I started writing years ago, and this is just like my own journaling. It's my own process. It's how I do my quiet time.
Mm-hmm.
It's how I talk to God, if you want to call it that, um, and sort of go within. I find it deeper and easier to do when I put pen to paper because it slows my mind down.
So you do pen to paper, not sitting at the computer.
Mostly pen to paper. Sometimes
Mhm.
I sit at the computer,
Yeah.
but I would say 80% of the time it's pen to paper, and then I sit at the computer and I transfer it, and it's a little of both because rarely do I put it down on the computer word for word like I had it on the paper.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of an ever evolving kind of thing. But
Mm-hmm.
these were just my meditations, right? My journaling.
Yeah.
It could be about usually something that happened today, or it was my 50th birthday, right? That's the first thing in the book, and just my musings about that. What does that mean? I look back and think about my own family, and and
Mm-hmm.
it just goes deeper, and therefore the title. But
Yeah.
there are a collection of those type of meditations or reflections, and
Mm-hmm.
it could be it's just everyday life. It's what I say in the book. We go to church. Some of us have gone to church, or you go do whatever spiritual practice, but it's like everyday life is church, right? Everyday life is a spiritual practice.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to go anywhere.
Right.
Um,
Right. Yeah.
so the premise of the book is just that. It's that look around in the simplest of things. If we focus and we're present, there are all these deeper truths that reveal themselves. And
Yeah.
they usually don't if we just consider it all surface,
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
everything at face value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's such an invitation. I was talking with a client yesterday too about how much people need to talk. People need to be heard. People need to go within to be able to feel safe enough to go within and be heard and to share stories with each other. I think you sharing the way you share allows for people to see that you're willing to share, to step up and be vulnerable, and to help people know that for you, it really is a healing and a beautiful journey, and that they can kind of come on in, the water's fine. I think the invitation to share is part of what I like about what it is you've done there. And you allow yourself to become so open in your own vulnerability. People think vulnerability is so scary, but it's not necessarily. It's just allowing oneself to be open and seen and heard or felt. And so that is part of what I think is so beautiful about it.
Well, thanks. Yeah, like I said, it started out to be just for me. I never wrote these for anybody else. And then what happened years ago is, and they're relatively short, um, and it can be read in easily one sitting.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found over time was things would come up with friends or people that I was close to, and I'd see them maybe struggling with something that I had struggled with, and I saw something I had written, and I thought, wow, maybe this would speak to you. So I gave it out. I would just send it to somebody. I took a chance
Mm-hmm.
because you never know, right? I was taking a chance.
Yeah.
Um, and I was really blown away by um, how much it meant to them and how
Yeah.
much they got out of it.
Yeah.
And I remember I remember specifically, I have no idea what the time frame was, but it was early in that process, and getting that feedback, I thought, wow, I guess I have the ability to make people feel what I'm feeling, whatever I'm feeling when I write it, whatever I'm downloading. I mean, it is basically, I
Mhm.
basically sit and write what I feel like I'm hearing, what I'm
Mhm.
feeling and what I'm hearing. And to see that, wow, it isn't just me, it's other people too.
Yeah.
And it sort of helped me with my overall view of life, which I think I first developed by traveling, living overseas and seeing people of like all different colors and cultures and ethnicities and all of that. And you realize, wow, you know what? On one level, we're all the same.
Mhm.
We all want the same things. And we
Yeah.
all deal in, there's only so many things we deal with as humans.
We all
And
get egg on our faces too. Yeah, we all just, life can be messy for any of us. And
exactly.
yeah.
And my theory is that we're all living the same life, but the details are different. The
Mhm.
surface looks different. We have wildly different experiences on the surface.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a doctor, somebody else is whatever their job is, somebody else is unemployed, somebody else is, but it underneath the emotions and what we want and what we deal with, love, anger, compassion, judgment, all
Mhm.
those things are just human and they're
Yeah.
common to us all. And
Mhm.
I guess over time, I felt, well, I always felt like it was a compulsion to write. I was compelled to write. I could not write, and I've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of
You
them
got
that were
more.
never, again, meant to go anywhere
Yeah.
initially. And then I realized that people kept encouraging me, saying, "Look, you got to put these out. These are of
Yeah.
benefit to people
Mhm.
because, part of the message too, and yeah, it's a little scary." To be vulnerable in that way because doctors are seen a certain way in our society. But part of the message is, hey, there's no free lunch just because you're a doctor, right? People see you
Mhm.
a certain way. And sometimes doctors see themselves a certain way, talking about MDs. Uh,
Mhm.
but we're just people too, and we deal with the same stuff. And um, I guess, yeah, ultimately I just decided, I'm just going to put it out there. And I felt my experience with the Center for Mind Body Medicine helped me tremendously in that because we would do these small groups where you share like intimately, like there's safety in the group, it's confidential, they have a beautiful model, and people from all walks of life are in the same group, and you share your heart, and it's a safe place. The center is amazing. They have both Israelis and Palestinians on the faculty. They've been in Gaza in the past and done groups with Israelis and Palestinians in the same group. And you
Mhm.
can imagine what comes up. And yet, because it's a place where they can be honest and because it's a, what do I want to say? They talk about being a safe container. It's a safe container.
Yeah.
And they see each other's
Stuff, right?
humanity.
Humanity,
I mean,
right.
it makes me emotional even to think about it. And I haven't been, I've run the groups before, but I haven't done it for a while. But you see everybody else's humanity. And it
Mhm.
doesn't matter if they're Israeli, it doesn't matter if they're Palestinian. It takes a few group meetings, but always that stuff starts to fall away. And you see people in their essence.
Mhm.
And I guess, my experience with that gave me, and my job as the group leader is to be a real person. I lead the group, I keep things going and I set the container and make things sure things run well. But part of my job is to be a real person too, right? Because that's the type of leadership they talk about at the center, by example. And it, yeah, so being through so many of those groups, I'm so confident we all deal with the same crap.
Well, the world doesn't really encourage it. I mean, it's clean up the place before company comes, put on your makeup, which is an interesting term, makeup. And is that to pretend or is that to catch up? Just an interesting term, but get ready for the world. And people are often criticized if their humanness shows. So in different professions. So, we're not really taught. And yeah, it is good to learn to discern. You don't necessarily want to be hanging it all out everywhere, but to be able to know and to feel good enough, okay enough, that it's okay to be able to share in certain times and places and feel safe enough. That's a real art that a lot of people don't really get to learn, and maybe later in life if they do.
I agree. I mean, I consider part of my work, as I try to evolve as time goes by, is sort of undoing all those old messages from when we grew up. And motivation was was a lot of shame in it, a lot of negative messages, to sort of get you to straighten up and fly right, to use a term I've heard in the past.
Yeah.
And we probably all have. A lot of it is really learning to undo those messages. And I think that's a lot of what the book is, just because I talk about my process and different memories and things like that were troubling, and I work my way through them. I think maybe one of the most interesting things about the way I write is when I start a piece, I just intuitively know how I want to start, but I don't necessarily know how I'm going to finish.
Yeah.
And I ask questions of whoever, whatever, just ask, well, why am I that way? Why do I feel this way? What am I missing? And generally there's the answers kind of come, and it often leads to places that you don't expect. And I guess that's what it would be for people. It'd be an invitation to stop and take a little time and look a little deeper, because the reasons we do things are often really out of habit, and they're really unquestioned. We really don't question our behavior or our reactions. Oftentimes they're just habits from a lifetime, and it's just the way we are, quote unquote. But it's not the way we are. It's the way we act. It's the way we react, but it's not really the way we are,
So I wonder, because when you read, when you go into reading, I don't even know, you've done it for me a couple of times, and I don't know if you literally feel it coming on, or how that if you get any kind of something that it's about to happen. But when you go in, and I think I've even been with you when you've done it with yourself, when you've suddenly said, oh, I'm reliving this certain memory. But when you do it, you go to such a deep place, and you take a person to such a deep place, and you kind of key in on certain images, and whether it's an actual memory or it's kind of putting a bunch of images of what somebody was going through into a like a vignette of what you see. It is absolutely incredible how deep you go with it. And I wonder if when you're writing, if you go to that same place where this something that happens to you when you're doing this for other people is doing this for you. Does that make any sense?
It does make sense. And I think that that is a theme, and that is a basic premise. It's like whatever you do for, you know what, I have a saying, I don't know, a little quote, and I don't remember who said it, but I have it. And it's from the Center for, I learned about it from the Center for Mind Body Medicine, one of my early mentors.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, whatever you do for others, you do for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a little longer than that, but that was the key. That was the key thing, because we're all connected. And if we're all connected, which we are, everything you do for yourself, you also do for others.
And vice versa.
And vice versa, right? Because it's all connected. It's all circular. So it has to work both ways. That's what holistic means.
Yeah.
But yes, I feel that absolutely when, if I'm doing a reading on someone, I feel it, I feel it. And on some level, it's healing for me as well. For me, it's interesting, how, because I'm so visual, but it's interesting to tie in my regular career. So what's my career? My career is as a radiologist. So I interpret images. So I read the image, I look at the image, I interpret it. Then I do a report, a written report for someone who may never see the image. The doctor that I'm writing the report for may never see the image. So I have to describe, my job is to describe that image well enough so that this person over the phone or wherever can get a picture in their head of what's really happening based on what I say.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I read 1 million. I figured it out one time. I estimated one time how many images have I viewed in my career. It's well over 1 million. And depending on how I describe it, I can paint an entirely different picture. For instance, you can say, okay, there's a breast mass. Okay, well, there's a breast mass. Well, it's well circumscribed. It's homogeneous. It's not vascular. It's, what we call wide. There's certain terms that we use. And basically for people in the field, I'm saying that's benign, right? That's by me using all those words, right, to describe a mass. Or I can say it's irregular, it's spiculated, there's shadowing, it's heterogeneous, it's highly vascular, right? It paints a different picture.
So the images do not get sent with the reports usually.
Well, these days it's on the computer. So but depending on the specialty, depending on the doctor's specialty, they may or may not need to look at it.
Right. Yeah.
If I send somebody to a breast surgeon, they're going to look at the image and they know what they're looking at.
Sure.
But they're not radiologists, but they know well what they're looking at. But if it's let's say a family practice doc and it's a chest x-ray and I describe something benign, they may not always need to look at it. But very often the words that I use can compel them to look. The message can be, you better look at this. Or the message can be, listen, this person's okay. If you want to check it out, you can, but you don't have to if you don't want to. This patient's safe, in other words. And I can convey that depending on my language.
So all that to say, this was great training for being able to describe in detail these other things that are experienced on an emotional level and on an energetic and soulful level. So you're describing these very deep experiences.
Yes, I never saw it that way. And it's like all of our lives, there are no accidents. And as things happen, even this book, as I look back, people ask me, well, how long does it take you to write a book? It's like, well, it took me, 6 months, but really it took me all my life, because you have to live it. And and you see all these experiences, not only just when you're a kid, but as an adult, all these things that seem random. And then as your life evolves, you look back and go, oh my gosh, that wasn't random at all. You can see where you've been prepared for certain things all along.
Because you are awake to the reflections, to the sort of the synchronicity. And I know you also do a lot with dreams. You listen to your dreams, so you pay attention to them.
Yes, I don't consider myself an expert at it, but I love dreams, and I've had some training in it. And
I think just listening within is the best training, really.
I think listening within is the best training, and nobody can really. There's dream books, right?
Oh,
that can tell you what the symbols are, but ultimately, you're the one who knows what the symbols are. They come to you intuitively, and I find dreams fascinating. Whether it's out of body experiences or some dreams are very meaningful. And I wake up and say, I better write that down right now. One of the days, there's 31 days, 31 in the book, different reflection for every day. One of them was a dream. And I described the dream. But then in the describing of it, that's why meditation is beautiful, or some kind of contemplative practice, deeper practice of self-inquiry, or just, I guess that's as good a term as any, like self-inquiry. You're listening because I got up, I knew immediately it was a meaningful dream. I could recount it for you right now. And this was, I don't know, a year ago. And as I was writing and describing the dream, the significance of the dream came to me. And it was really powerful of counteracting an old memory that I had. And then there are what I've heard described as pizza dreams. You ate too much pizza the night before. That means nothing, right? You just forget those, and you have a sense. Generally, again, it's the theme of the book. If we pay attention, there's so much we know intuitively as humans. You don't have to be a quote unquote intuitive.
Oh no,
we all are intuitive. We all have that capacity, and you get better at it by practicing. I
think getting better at staying conscious to the inner world, or the spirit world, or it could be called lots of different things, but staying conscious beyond, you talk about the mundane, and I'm actually speaking about the mundane this Sunday, but being conscious. I can remember times where I would sort of feel renewed in paying attention to my spirit life. And it would be like, I would liken it to being on a bike or on a scooter. And I'd say, okay, I'm going to stay on now. I'm going to stay on, and I'm not going to fall off. And, I'd stay on for a little while, and then I'd get all caught up in life and stories and drama and ego and every other thing. And then I'd come back to the spiritual. But to me, increasingly, it's about getting to a point of feeling more in sync with both working together. It's like more of the instruments in the orchestra blending together and hearing each other, and being able to have that dialogue between the inner and the experience in the world.
Yes, I totally agree. It's putting them together, because that is our experience. I mean, if we're just going to be in nirvana and never deal with the world, then why are we here? We're here to be both, right? We're heavenly and we're earthly all at the same time. So it's just the unique human experience. Well, when I say get better at intuition, for instance, really getting better only means listening more.
Yes.
That's all it's a whole other subject, but I think we've probably talked about it before. It fascinates me, but our language gives away so much of our internal rules, for instance, right? How we view the world. And if
Sure.
we just listen to what we say, and for instance, just that statement, oh, get better at it. Well, that's a cultural statement, right? It's a cultural statement because it's not like it's a competition.
No.
And you can't sit down and go, okay, I'm going to do 10 intuition push-ups this morning, right? That's kind of how we view everything. So, and that's what I was talking about before, which is when you want to evolve as a human, and understand the world and yourself in a better, deeper way, it often involves dumping things. It doesn't involve adding things to be better. It involves getting rid of things, right, that hold us back. And then you perceive everything in a much deeper way, and it's much easier to hold yourself and others in compassion. And once you find that path, you realize that's the path. That's like the only path. And you can put it in any kind of religion you want, or any kind of
Belief
you can
system.
put in any kind of belief system or words that you want. But either way, it all comes down to that. You know, that Jim Gordon talks about being fully human, and being fully human is just a beautiful experience. It's what we all really want. It's what we all really want when we chase after so many other things that we think are going to give it to us. But it's really that inner peace, and
Maybe that inner experience of bliss or joy.
Yes. Yeah. That's really what it is. And I guess that's what when I think about the book, I guess I haven't thought about any of these terms before, but it's kind of my search for that. It's my search for that. It's my
But that's
process
beautiful.
in chasing after that, and wanting it very deeply, and finding myself often in these places where I don't have that, or somebody irritates me and I'm like, well, why did they do that? Why am I irritated about this? Whatever it is, you could look around, where you're sitting, even as we speak, and there are 10 different things. There are 10 different avenues that you could look at, whether internally or externally, and find deeper truths that will help you to understand yourself better and understand the world better.
Yeah. I love it because, over the years, I would often say, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? And I just always knew that I wanted, I wanted you to bring out even more of what I knew was there. And I've always felt like, you have such a depth that I think people need. And I think you're going to get a lot of speaking from it, where you'll be able to use any of those as springboards for talks and or storytelling, or group activities where you encourage other people to you use yours and encourage other people to tell their stories in different ways. But I think, individual work and group work, and major ways of helping people to heal. I just think, it's high time. It's great timing.
Thanks. Yeah, hopefully it's going to be my next career. I've enjoyed what I've done up to now, but I do feel like, I've had this book in me all my life. If you read the first half, you may not have gotten to the place that I talk about my writing as a kid and some of those things. But I feel like I've had this book in me all my life. And it's sort of I don't know, coming out party in a sense, right? I mean, I've been successful. I've had a successful career, all those things. And yet it's always felt like there's, quote unquote, something deeper, that I think we're just here to help the world, and I wrote
Well,
just the other day about why write the book, and I there's multiple reasons, but one of them was I didn't want to waste my struggles, right? If I keep my
mhm.
struggles to myself, in a sense, they're wasted, right? I'm here for a while, I die and move on.
Mhm.
But in how I deal with my struggles and what I'm trying to accomplish and trying not to be judgmental and trying to be patient and all those things, it resonates with people I've found because we're all looking for the same thing. So if I just came up with that the other day actually about
I
wasting my
like that.
struggles by
Yeah.
not sharing them.
Right. And so I thought you talked about writing in the introduction or in the preface, but talk about writing as a kid.
Well, there's a piece towards the end of the book that talks about this as I was getting ready to go. The last few pieces are when I finally decided to get it published, when I finally drove and met the publishers in person and
Mm-hmm.
to see if they liked what I had written, and then they liked it, and then it just going through that process,
Mm-hmm.
and things came back to me like I when I was a kid. I mean, this is actually funny, but I was 8 or 9. I couldn't remember exactly, but I I was always writing. I was always doing stories, and I
That's
put a bunch of them together and put them in a Kleenex box,
oh.
and I taped the box up, and I guess I put in the mailbox. I'm not sure, but anyway, my dad found it. And I write about what it was like when my dad came down with the box, and I'm like, oh no, you know.
Oh.
And right, I just remember him saying, nobody's going to publish these. So of course I was crushed,
Oh,
and I
that's
was,
terrible.
yeah, and I was like, embarrassed and humiliated and all
Oh.
that stuff, right? So that's why I didn't tell anybody about it. So, but nobody told me about postage as a 9-year-old, so I just stuffed it in the mailbox. So
Oh.
it was just one of those memories, right? It was a difficult memory because my dad sort of crushed that, right?
Oh.
But, and this is what's beautiful about the writing process and the self reflection process, even if you don't write, because in writing it, as I went through it, I realized it's like, oh, well, what did dad say? I think he did say something, because I was sort of balled up, right? Because it was hurt, and hadn't really forgiven that. And I hadn't worked on it because it wasn't a big deal. He wasn't wrong. Nobody was going to publish it. But I suddenly remembered, it's like, oh, I think he said something like, just wait a few years. And that
Oh.
doesn't sound so harsh,
No.
right? And then so I thought, gosh, it probably crushed him to tell his little kid, right, who was so creative and so innocent and naive, and at 8 years old or 9 years old, had the drive to create this and want to put it out there. I said it probably crushed him to have to tell his little kid that. But I didn't see that as a child's memory. As a child's memory was much different.
Sure.
But as an adult contemplating this, I began to see it differently. As I'm writing it on the paper, I said, wow, maybe this didn't happen exactly like I thought it did.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the beauty of these pieces, I believe, and it's because they're sort of living, right? I don't think something comes to me, an event comes to mind, and I have certain thoughts about it, and I start writing it. But by the time I'm finished, I've gone to multiple different places. I'm not in the same place I was at the beginning of the page, beginning of the piece.
No, and I imagine that some of it has changed a lot from when you first wrote at that young age. And maybe that's some of what he also was saying, that they will be a lot different later as you grow.
Oh, I just wrote these stories about, I think, is the battle of the hot and cold planet.
Cool.
I had all these colors. I'm like, well, do the heat rays melt the ice rays, or do the ice rays melt the heat rays? Who's going to win? You know,
Oh,
that was all that this, I was 8 years old, nine
what
years
you were
old.
thinking about, though.
Well, it was
Wow.
it's kind of deep. It's kind of deep thinking
Yes.
now that I think, I didn't think so at the time, but
Oh.
it's kind of deep thinking now that I contemplate it. But so I guess I don't know. I think we're born with certain proclivities, I guess I would say, or certain tendencies. And those tendencies are always there, I
Mm-hmm.
think, throughout your whole life. And ultimately, they are your greatest gift.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, for me, I think it's always been curiosity. I've just always been curious
Mm-hmm.
about stuff. Why is it that way? Why is it that way? Well, why? And um,
One of the ones that I found especially well, meaningful and then certainly sad, where I know you ultimately had to do some forgiving, was about your dog.
oh yeah, my childhood dog, who
Oh
was
my
really
God.
like the emotional glue of the family. That's just how the family
Mm-hmm.
was, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and had a very deep emotional connection with her. And
Mm-hmm.
um, we had her when I was early, I think we got her when I was 5. So I don't even remember not having that dog. And then she died when I was like maybe 17, something like that.
Mm.
And I didn't get a chance to say goodbye. And for different reasons, I explained in the book, you know, decisions my parents made. And
Well,
I
yeah,
think,
you said you were off at a wrestling match and they didn't tell you what they were doing that day.
well,
And
I was in the middle of a wrestling tournament, which
oh,
was a 2 or
tournament.
3 day tournament,
Okay.
and wrestling meant a lot to me. And I think they just took her. Well, I know they took her and had her put to sleep, and they didn't tell me because they thought that it would upset me.
Mm.
And well, it probably would have upset me, but
Yeah.
upset me worse just having the dog
Yeah.
disappear.
Exactly. To come
You
home
know,
and yeah.
well, where's Lady? We had her put to sleep. You didn't tell me, you know, and then sort of I was the one that had the deepest connection with the dog.
Yeah.
So, um,
Mm. Oh
so
gosh.
that's all. And I didn't realize, again, why did this come up? That dog's been dead for 55 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? Why did this come up? Well, it's because a friend of mine in a small group where we were shared that her dog had just died and she was grieving over her dog.
Mm-hmm.
And because we were so connected in this group and it was so open and safe, that she shared her emotions over her dog. And that really struck me. This is where I'm talking about, it's a perfect example of how we're all having the same experience, right? Grief is human.
Mm-hmm.
And it was her dog. I didn't even know her before the group, but I could feel the experience. So it brought up that with me, with my dog. And I went, oh my God, I never grieved my dog, right? Because I'm in high
Mm-hmm.
school, whatever. I got a girlfriend now. And okay, sorry, the dog's gone. Yeah, it bothered me. You didn't tell me. All right. What's going on tomorrow? You know? So that's just life as a teenager, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I contemplated the whole thing. It brought back that whole memory just because my friend's dog died. And
Sure.
I went back and I started writing about it.
Yeah.
I felt her pain,
Yeah.
and it brought up this memory, and I started writing about it. And yeah, you get back to where this is the beautiful thing about writing or journaling as a process is, yes, I got back from my friend's dog died and I felt that pain. Okay, it got me to thinking, it got me to contemplating. I went all the way back through that memory and how much I loved my dog, and memories I hadn't thought of forever. But once I got to the place of, oh, why didn't they tell me? Right? Which is where at 17 it cuts off pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it allows me now as an adult to look back and deepen that memory.
Mhm.
oh, well, they really thought that. What were they going to do? You know what I mean? They didn't want to, just because they, in my view, even now made a mistake by not telling me, it didn't mean they didn't love me. You know what I mean? It didn't mean
No.
they loved me less
No.
by making the wrong call. And it's interesting that we were talking about dreams, because here's the connection with the piece maybe you didn't get to later in the book. I had a dream, and this is emotional even as we sit here,
Oh.
that I got to say goodbye to my dog.
Oh. Mm.
And part of this, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. I said goodbye to my dog. So this gets into a lot of Lynn
Mhm.
McTaggart's work,
Yes. Yes.
which is you can heal your past, right? We use imagery for the future. We imagine what we want in the future, but you can also use imagery to heal your past, because I
Mhm.
had this very deep, very vivid dream. And interestingly, you know about lucid dreams, right? They call
Mhm.
them lucid dreams,
Mhm.
and that's what this was. So this was about my dog, and she was older. This is the whole piece in the book, so now you'll know kind of
Oh
what.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
the dream was that she was old, and she was laying around and in pain, and we're all deciding what to do. And in this dream, I had a say. And then suddenly, I realized, as we often do, holy crap, this is a dream. It's a dream. That's not real. It's a dream. In lucid dreams, you don't wake up, right? And you can guide the dream. And it's
Mhm.
very powerful imagery.
Yeah.
And I remember in the middle of the dream going, well, you know what? If I have a say now, I'm going to say goodbye to Lady.
Oh. Yeah.
So it just happened.
Oh.
It
Well,
was so beautiful.
that is.
There was such healing that came out of that, because I got it when this is significant. This is a significant dream. I need to write this down. And there was all this forgiveness,
Oh yeah.
and the biggest thing, it wasn't so much the forgiveness, because I wasn't really that mad at mom.
Mm-mm.
As,
Mm-mm.
as far as mom and dad indiscretions go, that's pretty minor.
Mm.
I mean, for all of us, that's a pretty minor thing. I never really was super upset about them. I was
Mhm.
irritated with them about it, but never super
Mhm.
upset. But the bigger thing was, I never grieved my dog,
Yeah. You
who meant
didn't.
the world to me. It was the
Mhm.
only real emotional connection I had in that house. And
Sure.
and I realized it just got cut off, and I never grieved. Well, I'm 17. Who knows the need for grieving when you're 17, right? You're in high school and you got stuff going on. But so I wrote, it ended up being that piece finished up about grief. It
Mhm.
started out about my dog, but it ended up about grief in general, which is you just got to do it, right? We just have to do it. And if we don't grieve, then our memories are locked at sort of a more superficial
Mhm.
level. Here's how I described it, is that it's like seeing my dog in a black and white picture. And I know I loved my dog. Yes, I loved my dog. That was great. You know, it was nice. She's not here now. But when you grieve and you let that emotion come out, which is it's processing stuff that's been in there since I was 17.
Mhm.
And it's that you take that black and white photo of something that was 50 years old, and it's like, yeah, that was nice. And it turns it into this like living color photo in your
Mhm.
heart,
Mhm.
like your dog's still here,
Mhm.
and it's just so much richer. The memories are richer. I describe
Yes.
them. This
Yes.
is where use that ability to describe in detail the
Mhm.
pictures that I'm seeing, of feeling her fur and looking into her dark
Oh.
brown eyes, right? Because I'm seeing these pictures in my head, and feeling it, I just describe it.
Yeah.
And there's a theme, because it doesn't matter whether, and that's the point of the writing at the end of it, it doesn't matter whether it's a dog, it doesn't matter
No.
whether it's a cat, it doesn't matter whether it's your spouse, right? Not to equate those things, but in terms of grieving, it's a necessary human thing.
Well, to me,
And
it sounds like what it allowed you to do was to make it full of meaning for you and to enrich the meaning. Like, I love the book The Little Prince, and where he talks about, once you love your rose, you will know your rose is different from all the other roses. So you, in that time, were able to, I think, enrich your life, enrich your heart by really building on all the imagery of what you could know about her and your connection. And to say, like, I don't know that I agree that kids don't know about grieving, or but to me, that's your experience about how all of that with the parents isn't what it's really all about, or isn't so important. But to some it really is, and some don't ever go past that. And I think that for you to be able to say that dog was what I knew about emotional connection. I never really knew about emotional connection before that. And it might have been real hard to figure out, how do I create or experience another emotional connection when I don't even know how to let go of the one that I had, So
well,
yeah,
that's pretty right on the mark,
yeah.
actually. Yeah, no, that's pretty right on.
But I think it's very beautiful. And to, I think to many, that's what they will probably get is, oh, emotional connection. Wow. What is that? Oh, I guess I have felt that. And oh, where did that go? And oh yeah, I remember that. Or oh, I remember losing that. And you know, it's too bad there wasn't, I mean, I think no matter how well their intentions are or were, it's a very real kind of too bad that they didn't find a way for you to get to say goodbye. That is real. And it doesn't mean you have to make a horrible mark on them and say, oh, they were terrible people and all that. But yeah.
Yeah, it was just an empty place,
Whoa.
just a little,
Yeah.
it's just a small one. It's not the end of the world, right? It's
No,
not
no, but
not a capital parental offense,
no,
but
but
it
still
was
very
just,
deep and real.
yes, very deep and real. And one of the other things that came to me while I was writing that piece was just about, well, people say, well, it's just a dog. It's like, well, okay, what does that mean more than if you loved your cat? What if you loved your turtle? What if you love people? Or, so I was contemplating that. And what came to me was, we are love. That, right? That's what
Mhm,
we are at our
mhm,
essence. And
mhm,
the people and things that we quote unquote love are people and things that put us in touch with who we really are.
mhm,
And we project that onto people and say, oh, we love them because, of this or
mhm,
that. But ultimately, they're like triggers, or they cause us to connect with ourselves, really.
mhm, mhm.
And it doesn't matter whether it's a dog, you know, um,
Unless it does at the
unless it,
time.
well,
Mhm,
yeah, unless it does at the time. I mean, I think
mhm.
in other words, what I
It,
mean by that is that it's not to be diminished
no, no,
because it
not at
was a
all.
dog.
No, oh no. And
Um,
oftentimes, the connection, I marvel at the connections between animals and people, the language of play, or the language of an animal learning, oh, this is what my person does, and this is how I know what I'm supposed to do, because I feel, I know what it is they're doing. And so there's this back and forth language that is just incredible, you
well,
know.
and I agree. And, animals know more about unconditional than humans do. And right. And there's this saying, dear God, please make me into the man my dog thinks I am.
Yeah,
So
sure.
it's really a special relationship. And depending on what you're missing, it's another theme of the book. It's like the universe sends us, depending on what you're missing,
Yeah.
and situations come to you in the oddest of places, right? For me, it was a dog, and it
Yeah.
filled in this gap that I didn't know I had. Why is it so meaningful? I've had other dogs, but this one was special and it was very meaningful. It filled in a gap for that little boy who had no idea what gaps were or that he even had one. And
Beautiful.
wasn't the only time in my life. I describe other times in my life where those things have happened, and I think they happen for us all. And I guess the invitation of the book is to just begin to look, right? Just begin to look inside,
Sure.
look at your life, look all around. If you look a little deeper,
Well,
there are wells and pools of incredible things that we
I
miss, just skate along the surface.
yeah, and I know you've heard people say thank you for their cancer or for their anything. I've heard people say, I'm thankful for my alcoholism or my substance abuse, or I'm thankful for, lots of different things that sort of got their attention, got our attention in any way, and opened up. I think Ian Van Sant, I think she was the one who wrote a title, something about one day my soul just opened up or cracked open or something like that. And I think the experiences that open us or crack us or provide the opportunity for us to get to know who we are beyond the day to day or the surface experiences. Like, wow, that's what I hear you inviting people to. That it doesn't have to even be a calamity. It doesn't have to be cancer. It doesn't have to be something tragic, but it's a call to move to those places that really are saying, please, please come and build meaning.
Yes. And there are things inside of all of us that are saying, please heal me.
Yes, yes.
And that's where a lot of the different things keep cropping up in our lives. And we get irritated sometimes with it or frustrated or want them to go away because they don't feel good, but they're really saying, please heal me. That's what it is. And it's another, I guess it's a relatively recent realization for me, just I'd say in the last few years, is you can't go back and change, right? My parents didn't tell me that they took the dog and had her put down. They didn't tell me. But with imagery or dreams or internal work, effectively, I got to say goodbye to my dog, right?
Sure,
and who's to
sure.
say which reality is more real? But you can use imagery to go back and you can change
Yes.
the past. You can't change what happened, but you can see it in a different way. And what happened is, for me with the dog thing, is that I saw it more as an adult. I got to see it more as an adult. And I had this deep understanding from my parents. It's like, what are they going to do? They were actively thinking of me when they decided not to tell me. They just made the wrong call. But they
Well,
were specifically considering me, right? So I see that differently as an adult. But when you carry the memory as a 17-year-old, how many 17-year-old memories do we have in our, where we're stuck, right? We get stuck where we don't forgive.
well, sure. And I think people at lots of ages, like, I mean, I guess I would want to say, even to, if I'm working with somebody, and I remember my therapist said to me, I started justifying things my parents did. And she said, you're old enough to stop forgiving them. Because I think sometimes people very quickly move to justifying what someone did. Here's another thing that I would think is really cool. I mean, I think on one way, that imagery, you got to heal the grieving part of you. You got to feel the grief by saying goodbye to the dog. But I also think that in a way, for any way that your children ever felt disappointed in like, oh, dad, he fell short. He didn't give me a chance to whatever. You got to feel the good intentions of your parents and to then know how well intended you've been as a parent.
Yes, I would agree. And I think that again, that's the whole point. We're all connected. We are
Mm-hmm.
all connected. And the way
Mm-hmm.
families work, right? When I forgive something my parents did or didn't do,
It helps them heal.
it helps, yeah, it helps me heal and
Yeah.
it helps break because there are patterns in family. We study this in
Mm-hmm.
the Center for Mind
Mm-hmm.
Body
Sure.
Medicine. We
Sure.
do these genograms, and there are different
Mm-hmm.
things are inherited in families, and they run in families that are not just physical. It's not just DNA,
Mm-hmm.
and and I feel like it's part of our work while we're here is to undo those patterns,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
where they're unhealthy, and yes, when I let my parents off the hook, let's say, right, where one
Mm-hmm.
day, well, specifically like my dad, I remembered him walking down the stairs. I mean, that's a specific memory with the box that of my stories. Um, and then when you see it differently, and I let him off the hook for that, it just it just shifts the energy in my whole family. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter that my
Mm-hmm.
kids are grown and gone.
Right.
Doesn't matter. The generational part of that, I stop and cut off once I forgive and just go, you know what, you were doing the best you could. um
I love the way you wrote about how much it meant to you when your kids, different ways, wanted to spend time with you, even as adults.
yeah, that was very sweet. And that's
Yeah.
the interesting part of the book is that I wrote that while my daughter was 12. I wrote that 20 years ago.
That's right. I remember you saying she was 12, but then I think it was your son also wanted you to play
Play basketball with him,
basketball.
even though
Yeah.
he never I
Yeah.
was a wrestler in high school. I'm not that tall. I don't jump. And my son was pretty good. So he would want to play with me out in the driveway all the
Yes.
time. And I'm like, why are you doing this? I and then it was but it was I saw deeper. I saw
Mhm.
deeper. That's the whole point of the book. Wait a minute. He doesn't get a kick out of beating me. He's a pretty confident guy.
Yeah.
He just wants to hang out.
Yes. Absolutely. He just wants to hang
Right.
out.
And I went
Mhm.
through each of the kids and I could see times where, again, on the surface, I'm a dad. It's my job. I'll go play basketball with my kid. That's what we do. But
Yeah.
but it took me sitting down and writing about it and then letting those inner feelings evolve to realize, wait a minute, it's not about the basketball. My daughter had seen that movie 15 times. She knew it by heart.
Yeah. You were
And
saying
yet,
that, and it
and
wasn't
yet
even a
she
favorite movie, but yeah.
Yeah, and she wanted me to watch it. And I thought, oh,
Yes.
all right. She'd been asking me, all right. And yeah, I found it extraordinarily moving. And I don't even remember what the movie was. But, that's what started the whole writing.
Mhm.
Why am I finding this so extraordinarily moving? It's just a dumb movie. It was a fine movie. I don't remember the name. What's going on?
Right.
And that's when that's what's going on. It's not
Mhm.
the movie. My daughter wants to spend time with me.
Mhm.
And how wonderful that made me feel, as opposed to, and then it brought up the whole other, oh yeah, my other kids. I went through each of them and
Mhm.
realized times that they did that. And then I
Yes.
fast forwarded to now and talk about how they still come home. They still want to come home.
Yes. And how close the family still is.
Yeah. And yeah, it was just beautiful. But I think it's a
Mhm.
theme that we can all, unless I take the time to look deeper at what's going on in the everyday things, there's not much more everyday than your daughter going, hey, will you watch this movie with me? Okay, fine. You know. Um, and But unless you say, what's going on here? Why am I feeling so? Why does this make me feel so good? This doesn't make any sense. And then it expands a whole other world.
Mhm.
And it's a world of gratitude and of love and of peace.
And
It's
that's how you're inviting people into it.
yes.
Mhm.
And hopefully showing them that these things are everywhere. I've had riding on my bike,
Yeah.
something my yoga teacher said, just going
Mhm.
through some of these,
Yeah.
I work
Pizza.
online. Pizza, or I ordered a pizza. And contemplation, sort of a spiritual view of ordering a pizza, right? Anything, any day, if we pay attention, there are so many deeper things to learn and understand about ourselves and the human condition. And when we understand them, when we get in touch with them, we see how beautiful life is and how unimportant most of the things are that we get hung up on.
Yeah.
And I think that's how we were meant to live. I
Mhm.
think that's how we were meant as humans. We are designed to exist that way. We're not designed to judge other people. We're
Mhm.
not designed to judge ourselves or hammer ourselves for mistakes.
No.
But we all do.
Mhm.
And there's one in there about the inner critic. What do I do about my inner critic? Right? I want to assassinate him. So I'm writing my real feelings down.
Yeah.
But then it
Mhm.
evolves into, well, what do I do? What do we do about our inner critic? So it's just invitation, because I doubt that there's a couple about being a doctor, but it's they're generic too, right? The texts were frustrated one day, and I was listening to them, and I did a whole writing on frustration. Well, we all get frustrated. It doesn't matter whether you're a doctor or a gas station attendant,
No.
right? So what does
Right.
frustration mean? What is it telling me? Um, so I guess that's what I'm inviting everybody to do, because for me, and I think for anybody that does this that I've talked to,
Mhm.
your life, we realize how rich life is and how beautiful it is. And even the problems that we hang out with, we are just superficial problems mostly.
Mhm. They're like the props in a way.
They're the props in a way, right? We're all out of here soon enough, right? So
Yeah.
what's the point? And I think
Mhm.
that once you think of, some about death, right? About
Mhm.
thinking of the reality of death and what does that do? Well, it makes you live,
Yeah.
right? When you realize you don't have that much time, you don't want to, I don't care if you live to 100, right? It's pretty
Mhm.
darn short.
Yeah.
And, and paradoxically, thinking about it, keeping that in mind helps us to live better,
Yeah.
to live more conscious,
Yes. Absolutely.
right? The time is not,
Mhm.
well, it's endless, but it's not endless in this form.
Right. Yeah.
And so since we only have so much time in this form and we
Mhm.
don't know how long that's going to be, in my view, when I'm in my right mind and in my right heart, I'm wasting my time if I'm not in my right heart, right? When I judge
Mhm.
people, I'm wasting my time on
Mhm.
this plane,
Mhm.
not accomplishing anything, not positive anyway. So it's just my process, and it's just my process, but it's to a
Mhm.
place that I believe we all want to go. It's to a place
Mhm.
that we
Mhm.
all are.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
are love. We're naturally
Mhm.
compassionate
Mhm.
beings.
I think people are just so hungry, often feeling like I don't know where to begin. I don't know where to begin, or I don't know how to feel okay beginning even. And so I think much about you sharing your process is it's back to kind of come on in. The water's fine. It's letting people know, I've been there. I've even been there with a with an important career of influence. And guess what? I've still dealt with these really deep things. And I'm telling you, you can know, as I have come to know, they're beautiful. Life is beautiful.
Yeah.
And
No, that's it. That's it in a nutshell. Come on in. The water's fine.
yeah. And I think it's people really do often need to know where and how to start. I think especially now, what I think many people feel is they're afraid of either being out of control or they already feel out of control and they don't know. I heard a wonderful speaker the other day. I think it's pronounced Gabor Mate, and he's got some beautiful books out there. And he's a doctor, and he's talking again about there's a lot in our lives that doesn't prepare us for this. He's got one book out called The Myth of Normal. And I've often thought of writing The Myth of the Together Person, because in a way it is a myth, and then he talks about when the body says no, and how when we don't know how to say no, and we don't know how to express what it is we really are wanting and needing, well, then our body will say no for us. The autoimmune diseases will come in. And so he's, really saying he thinks that we have a way to go, but things are going to get better as more of us are healing from so much of this. But yeah, I think it's an absolutely beautiful book. I'm already thinking of somebody I'm going to give it to. So tell us about when it's coming out and all that.
The launch is officially November 7th, Tuesday.
Okay.
You can pre-order on Barnes & Noble now. It's available on Kindle now for pre-order at Amazon.
Okay.
It's not available yet in paperback on Amazon. Okay. You can get an autographed copy on my website, which is thomashudsonmd.com.
Okay.
For people that are interested in an autographed copy. And then once it's the 7th, and it should be ready on Amazon, all those links are going to be on my website if you want to go to my website. It also describes my consultations and kind of what I do.
I want to put that in the show notes.
Yeah, thomashudsonmd.com. It's my brand new website.
Yay.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes. It's like I said, it's kind of a coming out thing for me, being a conventional physician and having this mindset all along, but sort of not really telling too many people. I certainly didn't tell my colleagues. Everybody else knew. All my other friends knew.
Right.
But I don't tell my colleagues much. But this is now, hey world, this is me. And
doesn't that feel good?
Ultimately, because we're all connected and we're all having the same human experience, my point is, this is us.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. This is us, and it's meant to be read and reread. Read and reread and I have read these things 100 times, and when I read them, I still feel them. And it's an easy place to go to take me to a beautiful place.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
So it's not these are all in, kind of prose poetry. It's called spiritual poems. It's sort of prose, but it's sort of poetry. It's interesting, kind of unique format, but they're not long. They're meant to be accessible and to invite you to a certain place. So you can go there along with me. And hopefully, at least what most people relate, feel what I felt.
It's almost like modeling something for people, or just giving them something that they can sort of try on in a way and go, oh, this isn't so scary. I guess I can feel that, and I can, I'm reminded of this that I have experienced. And
yes, exactly, because everybody, they won't have the same dog I had. It won't be the same exact, but there'll be parallel experiences.
Yeah.
And that's why I say we're living the same life, just the details are different. It's realizing we are light. But there's, this inner struggle that most of us have to realize that, accept that, and live in that. It's a process.
I can't thank you enough, and I'm so proud of you. And I know I'll be there Tuesday, and to watch this whole journey, and to, I really think you'll be out there speaking and leading some circles, or maybe you and Lana doing some things even more than you already have been. You've been trailblazers for a while.
Yeah, has been for a while. Yeah. So it'll be interesting, but it feels good to get this out, and it feels good. My grandkids will read this book. It doesn't matter if they read it in 30 years. I don't care. Do you know what I mean? But it's really a legacy for the family, and I don't know, it's something I'll leave behind. So it makes me feel very, some of my favorite authors have been gone Alan Watts is one, Ernest Holmes is one. I think he died in 1950. So the truth is truth, and it transcends time.
Yeah.
And just because I'm writing it in 2023 doesn't mean somebody, in 2083 that it will find it and really, speak to them and make a big difference. So
I think between now and then, a whole lot more people will be thanking you.
Well, thanks. Hopefully that won't be the only guy. I'm just waiting for the guy in 2083 to find the book. Hopefully there'll be more than that. But anyway, well, I have enjoyed very much talking with you as always. It could go on forever.
You bet.
And you've been a big part of my process over the years too. So
I'm so glad. Wow.
Thank you for that.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, and many congrats. And I will finish reading, and I'm sure I'll be posting a review wherever, and I'll be buying it for someone else. I already know somebody I'm going to buy it for.
Well, thanks, Debbie. I'll see you at the book launch. You can tell them about the book launch on Tuesday.
Yeah, I will. I'll be there.
Thanks. It's been great talking with you.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.